That that always that's always going to be hands down one of my most favorite and recognizable theme songs to any online browser flash game. It's Happy Wheels. And it's a very fitting theme for the topic of today's destination on memory lane. Welcome back, by the way. And today I'm not going to talk about one game. I'm actually going to talk about websites you can play these games on. As the topic for today's episode is favorite gaming websites. Now, this is not now little disclaimer here. This is not a ranking video. I'm not doing a top 20. I'm not doing my top 20. I believe I have 20 here if I counted correctly. I'm just giving off a list of my favorite gaming websites, and I know a lot of them are yours too because these are some pretty big name websites that we all used to play on back in the day and still use today. Some of them. Some of them we can't because they're no longer exist. But I'm gonna mention them anyway because they deserve to have the attention. So we're just gonna get right into it. And you know what? Since it was the intro, I might as well go ahead and just start off with TotalJerkface.com by Jim Bonacci. TotalJerkface.com is not a very big website, like size wise. It does have two big games on there, and one of the games is huge, and that's Happy Wheels. The other game is Divine Intervention. Now, I used to love this website because it was interactive. If you guys remember, especially like when you would go play Happy Wheels, there was a little box of like an animated portrait of Jim Bonacci, and it was like you could scroll through the different looks. So it'll be like a normal version of him, and you click the arrow, then he turns into a wizard. You click the arrow again, he turns into like a crash survivor. He's all blooded up and on fire. Click it again, he turns into Santa Claus, and then you click the picture itself, and the picture will talk to you. It's like, "You are my new best friend." And then, or every once in a while, if you wave the cursor over it, like a cupcake will pop up or a burrito will pop up, and you'll eat it. Like, oh boy, that was delicious, like it was an interactive website, and it was so cool. But there's some little things like that just kind of just brings it back to me, like it's just a memory now. Because like, yeah, sure, you can still go on uh totaljerkface.com and play those two games, but it just doesn't hit the same because the website isn't as interactive. Adobe Flash Player is basically non-existent now. It's just gone. So now everyone else is using like HTML and other stuff like that, emulators and just anything to help keep the game going and just keep the system alive. But yeah, Total Jerkface. I definitely give my flowers to that website. I love that one. Love it. Moving on to one that's just it's no longer around, unfortunately. And I do remember playing on it quite a bit as a kid, as I'm sure some of you do as well. And it's Cartoon Network. Okay, I as a kid was a fan of Cartoon Network. Now I was mostly a Nickelodeon kid, but I loved Cartoon Network too. All right, the Grim Adventures of Billy and Mandy, Ed and Nettie, Codenamed Kids Next Door, Foster's Home for Imaginary Friends. Oh, I'd be here all day. I'd be here all day talking about the hits. And they had their own little games, their own little flash games that related to the show, or even had cameos in other games to play on CartoonNetwork.com. And it was just so cool because, like, you got to think, like, when I started watching Cartoon Network, it wasn't the black and white C and N that you see now. It was Cartoon Network. It was spelled out inside of a rectangular box, but it was checkered, black and white checkers. You know what I'm talking about. You know what I'm talking about by the old Cartoon Network logo. You can't sit up and tell me you don't. You do. That's the goat logo. You don't fuck with that one. They need to bring that one back because that was nostalgia as hell. But it was so cool because it was a game you played. As a kid, you're just like, whoa, a Johnny Bravo video game. It's like a Courage the Cowardly Dog video game. Like that's cool. And it's just awesome. And speaking of that, I'm gonna jump from Cartoon Network straight to Nickelodeon, Nick.com. I mean, what can I say? It still exists today. it just doesn't hit as the same. Like we all remember the old school Nickelodeon uh, logos. Okay, obviously there was the foot, the controversial one. There was the light bulb. There was the orange blobby stick figure. And Nickelodeon games had just everything from Nickelodeon, and eventually some Teen Nick stuff when Teen Nick and all those live action shows got real big, like Drake and Josh and iCarly and Zoe 101, stuff like that. They also had Nick Jr. games, okay, for the littler ones, so Blues Clues and Max and Ruby and shit like that. But I used to love it because SpongeBob was my jam as a kid, and Fairly Odd Parents and Jimmy Neutron. I loved all that stuff. And the fact that they had video games on there, I would jump on every once in a while and play like, oh look, I thought it's cool. I'm gonna say every single one of these was cool, for a nostalgia point. Like I'm looking at all this with rose-colored glasses. I'm looking at this with a shot of nostalgia in my system. That's kind of why I'm starting with these before I move on to the bigger ones that we still probably use today. One of them, for a fact, I know we still use because I still use it and it's still very popular. But we get to it later. But like Nickelodeon and Cartoon Network, sure those are kid games, but they were fun kid games. Like you didn't feel like a toddler playing these games. You didn't feel stupid. You had fun. It was a game, and games are meant to be fun, and it was fun. I had fun playing Ed, Edd and Eddy. I, I had fun playing Fairly Odd Parents. I had fun. And speaking of fun and cartoon games, we're gonna move on to basically at the time this station came on, it was basically Cartoon Network After Dark. And I'm talking about Adult Swim. Adult Swim games. Uh they had a little bit of Family Guy stuff. I remember they had a hint of Futurama on there a while back. But like some of their bigger shows like Inuyasha and Aqua Teen Hunger Force, um, Rick and Morty when Rick and Morty first came out. I believe Adult Swim games. And speaking of Adult Swim, if you go back to episode 5 of this podcast, 5 Minutes to Kill Yourself was an Adult Swim game, and that's kind of how I got introduced to that website. Yeah, sure, I was a fan of Family Guy and American Dad and all the other shows like that, Aqua Teen Hunger Force, but I didn't much care to because first of all, I didn't grow up with internet. I didn't need internet till I got to high school because that's when they all of a sudden they started doing online assignments and shit. But basically from like the first 14 years of my life, I didn't have internet. Like my grandparents did, school did, my friends did. You know, like I remember the days where like internet wasn't a requirement; it was a luxury. You know, you didn't need internet to do work or do your taxes or pay bills, and you still don't. But it's like some places really don't accept cash or check or money, or it has to be done with card. And the easiest way to do that is through a computer. But I remember back when you had a computer and you had internet, you had money. That was my thoughts. Like, oh, they have 5,000 hours at AOL. You know, they just put a disk in and installed Windows XP. Like it's just that's nostalgia right there for me. But when every time I get a chance to get my hands on the internet and just have a little fun, it was games like this. And I was introduced to 5 Minutes to Kill Yourself because when that game came out, they were advertising the shit out of it all over Adult Swim and Comedy Central and MTV. You know, uh, basically any station that wasn't Cartoon Network or Nickelodeon or Disney. No kid programs had that promoted. And I remember playing it. I was like, whoa! And then of course Nickelodeon had their own games, and that was cool. And Adult Swim and Cartoon Network, they all just had their own thing. It was just cool. Like I had so much fun as a kid playing the games of my favorite shows that I wish kind of never went away. You know. And speaking of that, I did mention that there are some websites I'm gonna talk about that probably are no longer around. And if they are around, then their gaming section no longer is around. Now I talked about Cartoon Network, but I'm gonna move on to Yahoo Games. I remember Yahoo Games as a kid because I remember Yahoo was like the number one like search engine at my grandparents' house. So when I would go over there, I would just go to Yahoo and had a game section, and I would play just some random ass Flash games, I remember playing a game from King. Now King, King, King is a developer that produces games, obviously, and they produced Candy Crush. So the people who make Candy Crush also started on Yahoo Games. I remember playing some of their stuff back then. I remember seeing that King logo pop up, but it was just a basic. I was too young to remember any, and I can't remember any games that were on there. It's been so damn long, you know. But I remember playing games on there, and the same thing with MSN games. MSN Messenger, like I never had it. Of course, I was a kid when I was a thing, so I didn't really need all that. I didn't need a messenger. But all right, sorry, my technical difficulties. Shit's acting up. It's all bad. It's all bad over here. All right. So as I was saying, MSN games and Yahoo games. Yeah, like there were messengers and search engines. As a kid, I didn't care for that. When I got on a computer, I wanted to do fun stuff. I would say that was games because I just saw it as another console. Just another way to play games and kill time and have fun. And MSN games, just like Yahoo games, I don't remember any games on there by name. You know, And I'm sure a lot of those games went onto other websites. So I might have played games that started on MSN or whatever on a different website. I don't know. I do remember playing it. I remember MSN. I remember MSN Messenger being a big deal. I remember that was kind of big when that came out and people were using it left and right, along with like AOL Messenger and stuff like that. Of course, and then MySpace was a thing. But MSN, I don't really have a whole lot of connection between Yahoo games and MSN games, but I do remember dabbling in them in quite a bit as a kid. All right, I'm gonna move on to E-Bombs World. Oh, we know E-Bombs World. We know that was for a lot of us. That was the website that introduced us to the band Psycho Stick. I didn't get introduced to them through E-Bombs World. I got introduced to them to another website that's going to be mentioned later. But there were some games on there. Now E-Bombs World is still active. People still talk about it more on a like a meme slash joking kind of things because it's E-Bombs World, but it still has some games on there. Last I checked, and it still is pretty active and has some flash games you just click and play right away. You know, like I'm still in my brain rot era on this podcast, so like all of these websites are just filled with brain rot, browser games and flash games. It's just it was a good time to have all that because it was you never know what was going to work. That's how a lot of flash games got big and big and big. Mobile gaming was the same way. Like let's bring up Angry Birds and see how big that got. When it comes to flash games, I'm gonna bring up Pogo, not the game, but the site that had games, Pogo. And I believe Pogo was like something that was pre-installed in this HP laptop I had back in the day, and it had some games that you can play for free. And some of the games had free trials, and I believe Pogo was the site that introduced me to Plants vs Zombies. And I remember playing it for the first time. I remember playing it for the first time and just falling in love with it immediately. Plants vs Zombies blew up after that. It's a mobile game. It's a game you can purchase and play the full game, which I did. It's a console game. I believe I have it on a 360 on disc. Like it's a great game. I love that. And I want to say Pogo is where I got its start. And there's some other websites I'm going to mention before I started getting into some of the bigger, more well-known ones that we still probably, stick our face into every once in a while. So some of the other ones I'm gonna mention is like DisneyGames.com. I wasn't a big Disney kid, so I didn't much care for Disney games, and I didn't really fool with DisneyGames.com. I kind of stuck my head in every once in a while, did little Toy Story games or whatnot, but I didn't really, you know, care all that much. And then J is Games as a website I used to stumble across a lot when I first got into YouTube years ago. and it was a gaming website that had games, and it had links to other gaming websites. So JA's Games is pretty cool. Still active today, still active, but it's like I felt like I had to dig deep to dig that one out because it's not as popular as the other ones on this list. And then another one I'm gonna bring up. I still play. I was playing on a this site not too long ago. Matter of fact, just a few days ago because it's just a good boost in nostalgia. Now it's not really like a gaming website, but it's like quiz games, test your knowledge based off memory and whatnot. It's Sporkle. Okay, y'all know Sporkle, where you go. It's a website where you type in any topic and there's a bunch of quizzes on there. Like let's say I type in uh WWE and then and there's quizzes that pop up like can you name every single person that wrestled at this event. You know, like it's just off the top of your head quiz type shit. So it's I like doing that every once in a while, kind of testing my memory. You know, and I thought it was cool. I still go in every once in a while, kind of test myself on my favorite topics. Sporkle. And then I'm gonna move on to A Game, agame.com. Now agame.com is just another generic flash gaming website that it's just a website that has different flash games on it. You know, some of them you probably recognize, some of them you probably don't. You know, but it's just another one of those websites, just like this one here, Crazy Games. Another one just has a bunch of different uh, topics, different games, different genres of all Flash and browser games. So you had quizzes, you had stuff for kids, stuff for girls, stuff for guys. You had, you know, fun ones, rage ones, puzzle games, you know, all the other stuff like that. And to move on from crazy games, I'm gonna go on to addicting games. Now, speaking of addicting games, now this one here, they did have a deal with Nickelodeon for a while, and I want to say they are like sister companies, sister websites, whatever you want to call it. But addicting games is where I was introduced to a lot of games, like the parking lot series, where you're a car and you're supposed to park the car as perfect as possible in the parking space, or like the world's hardest game, which you can find in the archives of this podcast. I did an episode about the world's hardest game series. And what else is on addicting games? Oh, the potty racer series, the potty racers where you race porta potties. I did an episode about that too. Check the archives for the potty racer series. But those came from addicting games. Those were real fun to play. And I want to say the game Give Up also came from addicting games. If you guys don't know, I think there's a part two as well. Give Up, you're this little blue guy and you're trying to go through this obstacle course of hazards without dying, you know, and see how far you can get before you decide to give up. And there's a big giant give up button at the bottom of the screen. But yeah, addicting games. Shout out to addicting games. I still love that website. I still go back every once in a while to kind of take a peek at some of my favorite Flash games that are still active, you know? I think it's cool that it's still standing, as well as Fun Brain. Oh, who remembers Fun Brain? Who remembers Pop Tropica on Fun Brain? I kind of tossed around the idea of doing like a Pop Tropica episode on Memory Lane. I also thought about doing an episode about Club Penguin. You know, I didn't really play those two all that much. You know, I kind of dabbled in it a little bit. So I can't do a whole lot when it comes to like, you know, doing it based off of memory. Like it would just been another like 20 to 25 minute, you know, episode where most of it is just me talking about the facts of the game. Like, oh, it was made by this, by these people, and the music was composed by this, you know, because I don't know a whole lot. I fooled with Pop Tropica more than I fooled with Club Penguin, but you know, not so much. You know, when it comes to like those websites that the school allowed us to be on, Fun Brain was one, but the other one is Cool Math. Now, how many of you remember Cool Math games? Oh, I still go back to Cool Math every once in a while. I did an episode about Bloxworks. I believe it's episode 6 on Memory Lane. Go back and listen to me do that because now Bloxworks isn't the only uh, game I played on Cool Math, and Cool Math isn't the only place that has that game, but it was the only place I know that I can trust. And that was a great game. So Bloxworks, and then I think they had a pool game on there. It wasn't 8 ball pool. It was just called something else. It might have been just 8 ball pool. I thought that was cool, or pool or something like that. Construction fall, tower defense, balloons tower defense. You know, uh, gluey. Just a lot of games on there that were so fun to play. You know, B cube. It's it's still a site to go back and fool around with every once in a while, just to get that feeling again. Like, oh god, what else was? Oh, the Run series. I did episode. Did I do an episode about the Run series? I don't remember. I don't think I did. I tossed around that idea too, about doing a Run series. I might do that one. You're a little gray alien and you're running on platforms in outer space, and then you can up the difficulty by either being on foot or on roller skates. But yeah, that Cool Math today is still one of my favorite Flash gaming websites, along with Congregate. Oh, Congregate was such a cool website when I first got introduced to it. The amount of games on there and the type of games that are on there were crazy. I believe now I know these games are on other sites, especially these other two that I'm about to mention, but like Monster Basement and the Last Stand trilogy, those games I played on Congregate first before I played them on the other sites, and it was so cool. Like, wow, like, look at these games. Look at this, you know. Uh, but Congregate, still to this day, I have it bookmarked. You know, like I still eventually one day go back and do some Let's Plays of Flash games. You know, instead of just doing strict console gaming, I might go back and do more Flash gaming and record that for Let's Plays on my YouTube channel. You know, Congregate was cool, and so was Armor Games. Now that's the other website. Armor Games, I loved Armor Games. Still to this day, I do, and that's also bookmarked. And now that's also had site games, you know, on there. But I want to say Armor Games was the website. I believe that the Last Stand really had their start before it got ported to other websites. But Armor Games also had was it the Dark Cut games? I want to say it was the Dark Cut games that got their start on Armor Games. I might be tripping here, but I'm pretty sure there was the Dark Cut games, which I did an episode as well. If you want to go back and listen to me do the Dark Cut trilogy, that was on there. And I'm looking through my notes. I think it had to be Dark Cut. But yeah, like you know, I remember being in what was it, elementary school, or the transition. I think it was the transition from elementary school to middle school, junior high, where I was first introduced to the first Dark Cut game. And that music, the music from the first Dark Cut game is just embedded into my soul. I love how dark the ambiance and mood is with that intro music. Like I just love that. And you know, so thanks to Armor Games, I was introduced to that. Now, you want to talk about being introduced to stuff? My all time, one of my, you know what? Yeah, you know, my all time favorite website for browser games and flash games, and still to this day, I'm on that website damn near every time I turn on my computer. It's bookmark. It's at the top of my bookmark list, and that is Newgrounds. Newgrounds. Everything by everyone. That's the website that introduced me to Psycho Stick. That is the website to introduce me to a lot of games. Okay, Dad and Me, you know, Happy Wheels introduced me on Newgrounds because I had a demo on there before I moved over to Total Jerkface, the actual website it's on. You know, the Ray games. Go back to my archives and listen to me talk about the Ray trilogy. You know, what else is on there? Like Pico School and was Lion Rider on there? No, but I think like Fancy Pants Adventure was on there. Skull Kid, Skincraft. You know, and Newgrounds was more than just a website for gaming. It was also a website where you can do watch little videos and shorts and stuff. I used to watch a lot of Super Mario parodies and Mortal Kombat parodies. And for you art fans out there, anybody who's familiar with Draw with Jazza on YouTube started on Newgrounds. Like Newgrounds has been around longer than YouTube, and Newgrounds was basically YouTube before YouTube. I believe Newgrounds came out in the mid to late '90s before YouTube came out in like 2005. So it's been around. It's not quite as popular as it was back then, but goddamn, it's still standing strong. It's still one of my all-time favorite flash gaming websites. Like I go on there every once in a while and just get lost on all the stuff I kind of grew up playing, and it's just bringing me back, and I just love it so much that it's I love it so much. It's my shit. It's my shit, man. When I say flash games, I always think about Newgrounds. I always recommend it to people who's looking to go back in time for certain games, you know. And Newgrounds is that website. It's like, hey, go check out Newgrounds. Check it out. Check out this goofy shit. Check out Pac-Man Pizza. Check out the men's room monologue. You know, it's check out the Henry Stickmin games. But I'm gonna move on here to these last few, and these ones are bigger websites that today still gain a lot of traffic, a lot of attention, and a lot of YouTubers still go to them, including myself. And I'm gonna start with itch.io. Itch, itch.io. I was introduced to that website thanks to the producers of Puppet Combo. Puppet Combo is known for some of the most haggard horror games to be created, and it created them in like old school, like PlayStation 1 graphic style. So it's retro looking and it's cool. And Puppet Combo, if that sounds familiar to some of you, they're known for games like uh, Power Drill Massacre, Babysitter Bloodbath, Stay Out of the House, you know, those type of games. And itch.io has a lot of their stuff, and not all their stuff. I think that's the site they started on, I want to say, before they move on to the next site that I'm going to talk about. And that is probably my favorite online gaming website. When I think PC gaming, I think of this website, this app, this Titan, Steam. Steam. I love Steam. So many games, so many genres, and such great deals. There's a lot of free to play games, millions of trailers, so you can check out a game before you buy it. And then there's games that have great prices and they go on sale all the time. I remember when Emily Wants to Play first came out, and then there's that second one came out. So I put them on my wish list, waited for sales, and I bought both of them games for a combined total. It was like less than $10 for a combined total for both those games. It's insane. You know, I remember when that game came out and that shit was huge. But Steam, man, Steam definitely deserves some flowers along with Newgrounds as my two S tier online gaming because I just love them two sites so much. It's insane. Like I have Newgrounds bookmarked. I have the Steam app on my phone, on my computer, on my laptop. You know, it's just the amount of shit you can do. You can play games that are on console. Like I can go on Steam and play Left 4 Dead, or I can play Slenderman. You know, I can go on Steam and play Five Nights at Freddy's, or I can go on Steam and play Plants vs Zombies. You know, they just have so much shit, and it's perfect. One of the most perfect places for indie game developers who are trying to get known in the console gaming world and possibly make physical copies. Like thanks to limited run games like uh Octodad has a physical copy. I can go get it on the PS4 on disc. It all started on Steam. But if I want to continue on here and talk about independence, I'm going to talk about these two websites together at the same time. Game Jolt and IndieDB. I was introduced to these websites back during uh, when Markiplier was starting to get big, and he was playing a lot of games on there. Slender Man, and I think Five Nights at Freddy's started on there. Uh, Jeff the Killer. What else was on there? There was just like God. There's so much games on there. So many games on both those websites. But those are also great for indie developers as well to get your name out there to make a big flash game or make a big game that you can purchase. It's such a solid pair, those two, and that's why I paired them together because they're kind of the same thing. A lot of games are free, just download it. A lot of games you pay a little bit for and then download it and just play it right away. It's just so cool on how many games you have access to if you have the proper internet connection. You know, these websites here, a lot of them are still active. A lot of them are still popular. A lot of them are still in full effect. We all know Steam is not going anywhere anytime soon. PC Master Race gamers, you know, keep shit like that alive. IndieDB and Game Jolt as well, I could say. But like, if you want to go like flash gaming, just simple brain rot kind of games, you go for the other websites: Newgrounds, Armor Games, Congregate, Addicting Games, etc. It's just solid gaming, solid memories, solid times growing up. It's funny how I started computer gaming with like n- MSN and Yahoo and Nickelodeon and Cartoon Network, and then I moved on to Cool Math and Funbrain, and then I moved on to Newgrounds and Game Jolt and IndieDB to eventually here on Steam. It's awesome, and I know a lot of these are your favorite websites too because these websites are still kind of talked about. Like people haven't forgotten about these, and that's cool. Keep the memory alive, keep the train going. You know, I love seeing independents, people who got to create new games and explore new ideas. Especially if it's like a flash game and you put it on Steam to free to play, or at least a trailer, or a Game Jolt or IndieDB, and it's just like, wow, like there's a lot of creatives out there that really try to get a certain type of reaction from people, whether it be a rage game and you're pissed off, or a puzzle game and you're confused, or a horror game and you're scared, or an action game and you're excited. Like it's just these indie developers, they know what the people want. They feed into it because they play these games like, you know what? I'm gonna make this kind of game and I'm gonna do this with it and I'm gonna amplify it. And that's exactly what they do, a lot of them, you know. And one thing I love about indie games is just like a lot of them not only love making horror games and stuff like that, but they also love making platformers. Platformers are so good, and indie platformers are great. And you can go on Steam and get a bunch, or you can go on uh Game Jolt and find some, what I'm saying, like Default Dan on Steam. I remember that game first came out, and I was like, that's so cool because like it's opposite, what hurts you doesn't hurt you in a normal platformer, and what doesn't hurt you does, you know and I just want to give my flowers to this list of games that kind of help get us through some of the more bland and boring parts of our day back in our lives where we had the time to have bland and boring parts. And shout out to Steam and Newgrounds for giving me a reason to keep gaming on my computer. you know, I just love those two websites so much, man. I do. And shout out to Happy Wheels. Still to this day, one of my all time favorites, if not my absolute all time favorite Flash game to ever be made. And shout out to my microphone for fucking up and making me have to edit this more than what I have to. And shout out to the plugs. Thank you for listening. Be sure to keep following, keep downloading, keep listening. I'm having fun doing this. I'm seeing my numbers go up and I love it. More downloads day by day, more followers, more views on my YouTube channel. Be sure to subscribe to my YouTube channel as well. I it's just awesome. Be sure to follow my socials, Instagram and Facebook, Kevin Gill Gaming. They all have the same profile picture, so you know you're at the right place. Yeah, I'm just a weirdo with a microphone, and apparently y'all don't mind that. I'm having fun, and it looks like you're having fun too. All right, y'all. Until next week, I'm out.